Chapter 29, Exploring Virgin Planets. On our way back, as Anastasia and I were returning from seeing grandfather, our conversation once again turned to the possible existence of a biological way for a person on Earth to explore other planets and galaxies. I reminded her, Anastasia, you mentioned that you think tirelessly about a biological way to explore other planets, and that you're finding logical confirmations of its existence. Can you lay out these logical lines of reasoning? We can begin now together to analyze the situation. Further on, you can continue on your own. All right, Anastasia, but you go ahead and start us off. First of all, it is essential to authoritatively establish the first fact. All that has been created in the technocratic world existed and exists in a biological and significantly more perfected form. Do you agree with this, Vladimir? Do you understand how important it is to establish this understanding? Of course, I agree. I'm not the only one who knows this. Many other people do, too. Man used to be able to do calculations in his head a lot better and a lot faster. Each person had their own inner calculator. Well, and so on. You can cite a great many examples here. The example I like the most is a person's birth. It's the clearest and most striking example because two methods exist simultaneously in the world now, the technocratic and the biological. The technocratic method is when scientists in a specialized institute take sperm from a man and an egg from a woman, mix them together in a test tube that they keep inside a special apparatus. They keep it at the necessary temperature and humidity, and basically it takes a lot of fuss and resources. Now the biological method is a lot simpler and more effective. A man and a woman in bed. They enjoy themselves, and soon afterward a person is born. A good example, Vladimir, only please take note of one very important detail. Even so, when a person is created, even if it is via the technocratic method, what lies at the heart of him is the biological material. Yes, of course, that's what's at his heart. You can't get anything without a sperm and the egg. And the biological method has no need to adopt anything from the technocratic world. Agreed. Not a thing. Well, except for a bed. Although you can get along without a bed, too. Basically, Anastasia, I totally agree, and I get it. The biological alternatives are significantly more perfected than the technocratic. When the technocratic man thinks up his so-called inventions and brain children, he's replaced existing and perfected biological mechanisms with primitive technocratic ones. That situation is completely anti-rational. And nonetheless, time and time again, human civilizations, losing all memory of their natural capabilities, have replaced them with primitive technocratic alternatives. We are unable to imagine now how one can get to one planet using a natural method. And in this very same way, people of a different civilization were unable to imagine the birth of a child in a non-technocratic way. Many women today cannot imagine giving birth to a child without another's help, without a maternity ward and technocratic equipment. If we continue further along these lines, then more and more children will be born using surrogate mothers. Something resembling farms will arise, where women who have been artificially inseminated will be concentrated. Their whole lives they will bear children and give them up. They will be provided with food and lodging, but they themselves, each one of them will see herself as an incubator for a human embryo. This has already happened in history, in one human civilization. In this same civilization, the practice of cloning people was also developed. As a result, a person in this civilization was unaware that it was possible to give birth to a person through biological means. Lacking awareness of this, lacking this thought, a woman had no possibility of conceiving a child, no matter how much she entered into intimate relations with a man. Now, if a woman did become pregnant by natural means after all, this was considered pathological, and the human embryo was immediately destroyed or was removed and grown artificially. Vladimir, do you agree with the assertion that any technocratic achievement is preceded by a person's act of losing the memory of his biological capabilities? I do. But now tell me, can a person use a technocratic method to transfer an image, a photograph of his kin's domain, for example, from one point on the Earth to another, or into outer space? Of course he can, using a computer and the internet. All he needs to do is choose an electronic address, scan the image onto his computer, go onto the internet, and send it to the address that he's chosen, and it will come up there on the computer. You can print it off. You can print it off the other computer using a printer. You can also send it into space, too. If you know the spaceship's electronic address, you can send it to the moon, and you can send an image from the moon to the Earth. It's already been done. Good, Vladimir. Very good. Only you have forgotten one important detail. The most important one. Which one? Before the person does all these various operations on the computer, the thought was born in him to send off the image. I agree. I didn't mention the thought because that goes without saying. But now tell me, can a person use a modern technocratic method to transfer not only an image but an object too, to all the points that you just named? An object? I don't think it'll work with an object. I thought about it for a brief time and then I added, Anastasia, I remembered that there are lathes that carve various designs out of wood, little sculptures, for example, under the direction of computer programs, and if you send the computer program tasked with carving out the little sculptures to a different continent via an electronic address, or to the moon, then another computer there, if it's hooked up to the same kind of lathe, will carve out the very same little figure. And there will be two of them, one that my computer made, and a second that the other computer will carve out. And that way, the little sculpture I have will be copied out onto a different continent, or onto the moon. So if it follows that one can use a modern technocratic method to transfer or copy and recreate an image or an object, even on a different planet, yes, one can. Do you understand what this means, Vladimir? What? This means that there exists a biological method for transferring an object from one planet to another, and that this means it is 1,000 times more perfected, simpler, and can be accessible to any person. The biological method requires the presence of no technology whatsoever. It is the human thought that is the most important in it. Yes, I agree. And in the case of creating a child, the most important thing is the thought. But a man whose thought about creating a child needs a woman too. And a woman who's thought about a child needs a man. Together, they materialize what they've thought. Together, Vladimir, the possibility of creation and birthing of a person by a man and a woman is the highest achievement. This means that it is possible, all the more so, for a person to create life on another planet using a biological method. For now it is unclear what components are necessary in order to materialize him. Yes, Anastasia, a tremendous discovery. It would turn out to be tremendous if you or someone else could find or discover these biological components. We need to think. It would be possible to comprehend and sense much were we to encounter that knowledge possessed by the people of the first civilization on the earth.